Oh, there it goes. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen. Truly, he is risen. Amen and hallelujah. It's good to be with y'all. I'm taking a break right now from writing a paper. It's the last one. It's the last one for the semester. Yeah. So, and like I was saying on Facebook, I am just about out of words. I am just about done. And hopefully I'll have enough words to finish. Just going to put a bow on it, you know. But it's going to be another good show today. We've got Deacon Timothy Kelleher on to talk, and we're going to talk about the importance of place. And I think we'll talk about politics some, and how it infiltrates the church, and how we can deal with that just as human beings, and also as pastors, as either ordained pastors or, you know, members of the royal priesthood. Yes, we're going to talk about that. But to get ready for that, let's do our Jesus prayer. All right? So, you ready? Yeah, let's do this together. This is good. I love doing this together. It's very special. Brings a lot of peace. Okay, let's get ready. Let's breathe in. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Last time. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay, I think now we're ready. You know, you can't hit New York attitude just go straight into it. You have to kind of warm up to it. So there it is. Mr. New York City himself, Deacon Timothy Kelleher, is in the house. Okay, and now we are rolling. Yes, Christ is risen.
Good morning.
Good morning, brother. So you
shout out to Father Harry before I forget for his book, his new book.
Right, yeah. So go to Amazon.com and Father Harry Linton-Bigler has two books that I saw. Yeah, I went for the one on the church being the local community, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also one on called Ecclesiology, Orthodox Ecclesiology or something like that. So I ordered both of them, and Lord willing, I'm going to have him on in a couple weeks, and we're going to talk about those books, and we're going to put those will be posted on Good Guys Wear Black too. Because we're so blessed. You know, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the USA, not real big, right?
Yeah.
But blessed. As Father Stephen Hutnick says, we don't have many, but we've got them all.
It's like that Spencer Tracy remark about Katharine Hepburn. She ain't got much, but what she's got is church.
Nice.
That may not be the appropriate analogy here, but I think you get the point.
Oh, I love it.
So what do you mean by when you say we talk about place? I was astonished.
Yeah, so here we go. So you and I, we both really love Flannery O'Connor, right?
Oh, yeah.
And she witnesses to two things that are just so much a part of our lives, right? And that is the importance of storytelling, right? And also, you know, our sacramental reality, our love of Christ, and our knowledge and understanding of how he works in this world. And she was completely into that, completely got both things. And one of the pieces of wisdoms that she has, so I recommend to everyone that you read Flannery O'Connor. You know, the short stories. You know, and if it doesn't hit you, there are other short stories, because not all of them are some of them you're gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
He stole her leg? What? what? What's going on? Right? Okay. But I guarantee you some of them are going to hit you and you'll be like, oh. And then you'll go back to that one and you go, oh, he stole her leg.
Yeah.
Oh. Anyways, so she, but one of the pieces of wisdom that she gives, and the American Library edition of her, where they take all of the works and they put it into one with those really thin Bible pages, right? So you can fit it. It has some of her essays. And she says, you don't try to move to New York to become a writer if you're from the South.
Yeah.
It's not your place. It's not going to work. Instead, revel in the place where you are. And it'll be more authentic, it'll be more true, and so you'll be more effective as a storyteller. Right? And that's one of the big pieces of advice she gave. And then the other was, don't try to write religious stories.
Right.
Just write well.
Yeah.
And those are both just awesome pieces of advice, And for you working in film, how true is that? How many Christian films have there been that just, you're like, oh, this is not a great witness?
Yeah. It's like message. There's a Wayans Brothers movie where they do a recurring theme where it's like, they're doing this social, it's like this socially conscious movie, and then somebody moves through the screen saying message. She's all about art, and if you're a committed Christian, that's going to come through with what you're doing. And I remember when we were in acting school, one of the things he would say was that the artist must know the reality he or she wishes to depict to the minutest detail, and also that you can't. And actors, or any artist really, promote expression of their temperament. You can't get away, you can't run away from your temperament. If you do that, if you try to be something that you're not temperamentally, it's gonna come across as false. And I think that's a good lesson also for people who preach, who feel, intimidated or daunted by the commission to preach. I mean, it's an awfully special opportunity, and I see people struggle with it. I know that I struggle with it, but I know people struggle with it really, really deeply. I think sometimes it's because they have some vague idea of what they should be like, instead of just being themselves and speaking basically from their heart, without reducing it all to yourself. And that's another thing we always taught in acting school by our teacher was, you have to extend yourself to what the playwright wrote. He used to say to me, nobody's interested in paying $100 to see little Timmy Kelleher impose his own pukey personality on Hamlet. So you take speech classes and you extend yourself to what the artist wrote. And in this case, what the artist wrote is the Gospels or a way of being, which we have to extend ourselves to without giving up who we are.
Right. Yeah, so let's go down this for a little bit on the preaching deal, right? One of the pieces of wisdom is that to find your sermon. What's your sermon, right? Which is basically another way of saying the same thing. How do you preach? And finding your voice.
Right.
And I recommend, especially in seminary, try on different voices. I think as preparing homilies, you should imitate the masters. Yeah. And, to include the Apostle Paul, right? Great homilies. And learn the craft through imitation, just like you learn any craft. Right. And watch, while you're in seminary especially, you'll have watched sermons your whole life, right? But not in the seminary, you're like, oh my goodness, it's going to be my turn soon. It's like going up that on the Scream Machine or some roller coaster, right? Oh no, it's about to happen. This is no longer fun and games. So try out different voices. Like, figure out what it is. And you're going to finally see someone, hopefully you find a mentor, someone to emulate, that has a temperament similar to your own. Because if not, it's going to be so awful for everyone involved, including you.
Yeah. People suffer up there in the pulpit.
Right, and who else suffers?
Yeah. Yes. People going, oh boy.
Yeah,
Here we go.
there's a
Here
fine
we
line between a bad homily and a hostage situation. Right? It's
But I
it's
think you're absolutely right. I mean, it, some people might feel that, oh, well, imitate somebody else. That's inauthentic. But people, I mean, artists do it all the time. Musicians borrow, or when they're starting out, they imitate sounds until they can sort of get their own sea legs. Same thing with poets. I mean, um, and writers of all kind. You read, read, read. My wife is a writer and an incredibly accomplished writer, and she reads constantly.
yeah,
Just constantly.
yeah. Right, right. And you will find your voice. And you take homiletics classes to learn the craft, right? You don't just read about how to do the research, how to compile it and stuff. Lord willing, you're also reading and listening to the masters.
Yeah.
The two masters that I go to regularly, my great teachers, in addition to the Apostle Paul, who's is St. John Chrysostom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because not only is he good, he's a golden mouth, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we have so much in English, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
go to ccel.org/fathers, and
That's
there it is.
yeah.
And it doesn't follow he wasn't on the exact same lectionary we are, but he you just look it up. You say, oh, okay, this I think I'm gonna preach from the epistle, and you look up. Oh, here's his homily on that epistle, and
Mm-hmm.
whoa,
Yeah.
okay, and you learn how he set it up. Usually, he goes kind of verse by verse, and then at the end, he'll have a moral he'll put into effect for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the new Chrysostom, who is Saint Nikolai Villamirovich, and he's fantastic. If you've got the prologue from Ohrid, every single day you've got a short homily.
Yeah.
And I've got his 2-volume collection of homilies that follows the lectionary.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's nothing better. There may be many things as good, but nothing better.
Yeah.
And
And start off just keeping it simple and truthful. And then you can build on whatever comes from that, extending yourself to, again, to what the playwright wrote. In this case, God is the playwright. It's a pretty good way to begin instead of this impossible burden of, which is weird because it's not clear in your own mind what you're aiming for,
yeah, right.
and so you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you so let me take two extremes of effective preachers that I've seen. One, Father Barnabas Powell, right? He was a preacher as a Pentecostal, a lot of energy, just really strong. And then Father Basil Zavaruka of blessed memory. I don't know if you ever heard him preach,
I
but
never met. No.
his inflections were not huge.
Yeah.
He said, you should stay in your box. You should stay.
Mm-hmm.
This is your space. It's not about you. And so he was very deliberate. He had that wonderful, very precise English accent, and incredibly profound.
Mm-hmm.
The things he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded of some advice that I got from a special forces officer. He had a knack for getting people to listen to him. He was brilliant. He had a PhD in philosophy of all things. And we were working together as analysts. And, we did a lot of briefings together. And what I noticed was, if he had something very important to say, he would say it softly.
Yeah.
And people were just completely focused on what he said.
Mm.
Right? You don't have to,
Yeah.
but go with your personality, right? I think it would have been incredibly inauthentic for Father Basil to try to imitate Father Barnabas Powell.
Well, exactly. Yeah. There you go. Right.
And Navarrete on the opposite way would have been pretty funny. So find yourself. And that's true of everything. One of the things that we do in seminary is we help people know who they are in Christ so that they can grow into the person they're called to be, right? And always, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. But it looked a lot different for St. Paul than it did for St. Peter,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The light comes through different shaped prisms, and that's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Right, right. Yeah, so about this place thing that you brought up. Yeah, so the idea is, um, be who you are. Don't be ashamed of where you're from. Tell that story. And we talked some about your growing up, right? Very different experience from my growing up. Right? I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, down
Mm-hmm.
by the airport, and so that's my place. So there goes my dog.
Is it a bear?
So, my sense of place is what you would almost call a kind of a vanilla American place. Just it's white bread, whatever. But am I ashamed of that? Am I like, no? In order for me to be really, good at storytelling, I need to, become something else. And
Yeah.
no, it's not true. It's just not true. So, and Flannery O'Connor, she was from Milledgeville, Georgia,
Yeah.
which is the rural South. And
I actually knocked on her mother's door once. Yeah.
wow,
Milledgeville.
how cool is that?
What a great experience. That's a good story. Yes.
Something's going on back there.
Another critic is heard from.
Yeah, that's our black lab. And here comes the little dog to come in, the instigator.
Yeah, the instigator.
Okay, but now this is why I do this outside, because it's like this inside pretty much 24/7. Because we've got 4 birds, we got the 2 dogs, we got 3 kids with us, and it's a nice house, but it's not a big house.
Mm.
Most excellent.
Right.
Mm. So even this place, so this is Hartwell, Georgia, right, which is kind of rural South. 80 years ago it was rural South.
Yeah.
It was middle of nowhere, right? And then they dammed up the Savannah River in a couple of places, and one of them created this Lake Hartwell.
Mm.
So now it's a mix of that kind of vanilla America, people who have moved here to be on the lake, and families that were already here. So it's that kind of mix that you get in a lot of places. So what I find is that when I relate to people, I can't rely on instincts, right? Because it's not like, oh, I'm going back to Georgia. Well, for one, the Georgia I grew up is gone, and it's 2.5 hours away anyways, distance-wise. So some of them are okay, right? Because I'm interacting with other people who are from that kind of suburban South sort of thing. But sometimes it's just completely off, and if I try to fit in with locals, it'll be incredibly inauthentic, and they'll be like, right, you're wearing the right hat, but
yeah, nice try, Johnny Reb.
Yeah, right. But if I'm authentic, right?
Yeah,
that's okay. They don't mind that my accent isn't all that pronounced and stuff. So you just kind of be who you are. It's all right. And we don't even hang Yankees down here anymore.
You don't,
right? So if you came down here, you'd find yourself welcome.
Well, yeah.
And unless you tried to pretend that you're something you weren't. Yeah, you can say y'all.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. When I was a little kid, we took a family trip from New York and drove all the way down to Florida.
Oh, that's awesome.
Petrified. Because I had this idea that once you cross that Mason-Dixon line, it's going to be like people, pot-bellied sheriffs and, chain gangs, and we were going to be sent to some sort of, crazy deliverance camp in the woods.
Yeah.
Because they would see the New York plates,
Yeah.
So.
And what happened?
It only happened twice. And I escaped.
That's quite a drive, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Oh, it was great. I mean, I loved it. We stopped at Stuckey's. They
Yes.
still have Stuckey's
Oh,
and south of the border and those places. Yeah.
yes. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, get stuck at Stuckey's south of the border. Yeah, that place is classic.
Still there. Mm.
Yeah, and then you've got the giant peach. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
saw that, but yeah, and you can stop and get boiled peanuts just about anywhere, right? I don't know if y'all did. You probably.
Well, I did try them. Yeah, I did try them much more recently, though.
Yeah, yeah. I love boiled peanuts. Yeah, and those trips with the family, just fantastic. My mom used to take us on those, and she would make it. She just made it so interesting. So we'd stop at the world's third largest ball of twine or whatever, whatever it was in the small town.
Right.
We're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's go check that out, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's great.
Have you read Neil Gaiman's American Gods?
I haven't read anything by him. I'm
Oh
afraid.
no, okay, he's a storyteller, right? It's
Yeah.
not a great book, but a good book with some cool concepts. That's my
Mm.
take on it.
Yeah.
And one of the concepts is that places have power.
Mm.
And so Ruby Falls is one of these nexuses of power. Ruby Falls is up there, North Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, kind of close to where they come together,
Mm.
and Alabama. They're all not too far away.
Yeah.
And Ruby Falls, it's so touristy, right? I mean, it's the coolest kind of kitsch. It's like Gatlinburg. Or Gatlinburg took that and just blew it up. If you ever go to Gatlinburg, it's
No.
just awesome.
Mm.
Awesome. A celebration of Southern kitsch. Yeah.
Mm.
Anyways, so my mom would take us there, and we'd go camping at different places and hiking and stuff. It was fantastic. Great way to grow up. Anyways, those road trips, though. Oh, man, you see America through that side window.
Yes, you do. You do. Yeah.
Yeah.
The power place. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what there is about that, or whether it's mostly psychological or if there's something objectively true about it. But there, I could narrow mine down to less than 5. In my experience so far. But when I'm there, just something just aligns. And you're like, I'm home.
Yeah. So where are they? Give us a few of them.
Well, New York would be one. Um,
So when you come, where does it hit you? So you've been away, and
Yeah.
now let's imagine you're driving in rather than
Okay.
flying in.
Yeah.
You're driving in. Was it when you come across the tunnel or the bridge?
Well, if you're coming up from up the turnpike from New Jersey and you begin to see the skyline, you pass the Bayonne Bridge and you start to see the Manhattan skyline, I start to get that sort of almost like in butterflies because I see it, and if I've been away for a while, it's like, ooh, I don't really know how to describe it or what's going on, but it's an anxiety. And then you go through the tunnel, you come out, and there's like that initial kind of like, this place is great, and the opposite, when you fly into like JFK and you get in a cab or a bus and you're coming through Queens, I look out and I go, because I've spent a lot of time in Queens, and you look out and I say to myself, I grew up here. This is like the harsh place, But then after like the first night, I am like, it's like, how could I have ever left here? I'm alive. I'm firing on all cylinders, And that's true in just about any part of the city I go. Another place is and it's a little patch in Villanova, right behind a place called Moriarty Hall. Is a beautiful little garden, and it's not really even a garden; it's just a patch of grass with a stone wall and a little gate in it. And for some reason, I always imagined that to be the garden where Augustine had the Tolle Lege experience, would take up and read, because it would have been a perfect setting. And somehow when I go there, it's just, like I said, everything just aligns right down to the core. And another place, my first trip to Rome, I'd always wanted to go to Rome. And I'd always had, I literally had dreams about it and what it would be like. And when I got there, it was different. And it was bigger and better and wilder than I could imagine. And I remember the first night I was staying in a little pensione right by the Pantheon, a very Spartan place, and it was a very hard, single little bed. I put my head on the pillow, and I literally said to myself, I took a deep breath, and I said, I am home. And it was like I was born in that place. and everything was just right. I didn't know what that meant, but I have the same experience whenever I go back. And whenever I get in the cab to leave, it is one of the saddest experiences. I was just all the time, my head against the window, looking out, going, "I don't want to go." You know?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I do know. Are there any other places that come to mind?
Well, Vancouver's becoming like that. I mean, I say to people that when I was a kid growing up in New York, I would, on a regular basis, and this is true, I would look up at the buildings and I'd look at, New York Harbor, if I was on the ferry or something like that, Statue of Liberty, and I would say to myself, this is an incredible place to grow up, you know? And I would try to imagine my grandparents coming into Ellis Island on the boat from like rural Ireland and looking at this place going, it must have been mind blowing, you know? Um, and so, to me, it was just an incredible. The novelty of growing up in a city like that never wore off. And now here, it's like the polar opposite. I mean, you have these beautiful snow-capped mountains all around you, and the bay right here is like literally 300 yards away. Uh,
Sorry about
Father Harry, tell me we already plugged it.
that. Yeah, so you're surrounded by the mountains
And
and the
so
bay.
I say to people here, it's almost the same thing. I'd say once a day here, I look around and I go, this is an amazing place. It's like, I call it Shangri-La because it's so physically beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. And you're developing ties with the place as well. So there's always affect. There's always emotion
Hmm.
that's part of this experience, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of thin places,
Yeah.
this is places of power. There's so much of it in mythology that let's talk about where that might come from. But
Right.
for me, let me tell you some
Hmm.
of the places. So when you're I feel that same anxiety when I'm as I see the skyline of New York, but it doesn't go away. just
Right.
just grows.
We'll go together. You'll feel that.
I think I will. You know what? When I have been there with someone who's comfortable there, it
Right.
changes,
Yeah.
right? So I went there once with Father Basil, and it was a great experience.
Mm.
We went and we just picked a random Chinese restaurant, and it was amazing. I was like, oh, okay, I can start to understand why people love this.
Hmm.
Right. But for me, we have a little place out in western Pennsylvania, pretty much the middle of nowhere, near Lake Gallitzin. The closest town is Altoona. Johnston isn't all that far away. They're both about 30, 45 minutes away. State College is about an hour away. And when I drive out there, I usually take the upper route, which is along 80, which is the road that goes east-west across northern Pennsylvania. And I've done this drive so many times out to camp or whatever. But then you go south on Interstate 99, and once you get once you're in there maybe 10, 15 minutes, you're up on a ridge, and you've got the mountains off to your right. Just
Mm.
this peace. A peace that's been growing as I make that pilgrimage.
Yeah.
But when I hit this certain point, just the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains for me, do it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to matter really where. I used to spend a lot of time in the summers from where my family's from, up in northern Pennsylvania in Potter County. And just love the smell, the feel, the contours, and again, that affect, right? Surrounded by family, the love, the good food, all of
Mm.
this. And church, very much part of that experience as well. That's where I was baptized. And
Oh.
yeah, so the Appalachian Mountains are part of that. And it's great here. This is the Piedmont Plateau is where Hartwell is.
Oh, okay.
But just 30 minutes away, you're into the foothills up at Walhalla, South Carolina, or going across to Toccoa. And, once I'm doing that, and now when I get to make that drive every other week up to our mission up in Waynesville, so there's a certain point where you come around Toccoa and then you're starting to head north, and it's just heaven, just so beautiful. That drive is amazing, and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
for them in Waynesville, it's like you in Vancouver. You're surrounded by it all the time. Those mountains and the majesty.
It's startling. It really is. I can't imagine taking it for granted, because to me it's just so different and just so startling every day. The color, and the vibrancy, and I don't know, the feel of the air.
Yeah, and so your point about New York, if you can make it here, you can make it. If you can have that sense in New York City, it's possible for human beings to connect and find peace anywhere.
I don't see how people, New York has this rap that people are gruff and tough, but it's false. I mean, they move fast because they have to, and they know how to get out of each other's way, and that's good. But New Yorkers can be incredibly patient and compassionate and helpful, and they just have a little bit of a bluntness about them that might not be familiar to people.
Right. And if you try it out, how many people do you pass in 5 minutes walking on the streets of New York? Of course you're going to love a little bit of personal space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you say, how you doing to everybody you pass, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, a culture builds up around that. But I found that as well, that the only New Yorkers that you can't like are the ones you don't know.
Exactly. Hey, nice. I like that.
Yeah.
That'd be a good tourist slogan.
You just don't know us yet.
Right.
So here, let me throw a little bit of theology in. So, as strong as that peace is, when I, make my way into into the Appalachian Mountains, where it's even stronger every time is at the altar.
Oh.
Every single time. And again, it's that combination of affect, what's going on there, the peace, the predictability, the love, all of it is just in that one spot.
Yeah.
And of course, we believe that there's an ontology to it.
Mm-hmm.
That there really is a power. It is kind of a thin place, right? Yeah. It is the thin place.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
That and the human heart, right? These are the thin places, or the stargates, where the ineffable meets the finite. So.
Well, that's an excellent point, though. I mean, the altar really is the core. I mean, it's the universal place. It's where everything that rises converges. Yeah. And he's Flannery O'Connor channeling Teilhard de Chardin. It really is. It is, and it's the same experience wherever you are, at whatever place that altar is situated, and it's a place of awe and freedom and just awe.
Right.
I mean, it's mind-boggling, and it's the same wherever you are. You could be in a garage in Georgia, or in the Andes, or in New York. It's the same reality, and it's the center of the earth.
Yeah, and we need that. We need that connection. This is something that Orthodoxy understands about our psychology that sometimes we miss out on in our American desire to what's the utility, what's the function of this thing, right? So if you go, certainly there is a sense of place when you go into a low church, more a Protestant place, even if you go into a place where the friends meet, right? There is a sense of place to it, because it's a place of peace and so on. But we don't apologize for it at all. We're like, no, this is the place, or this is an icon of the place. And
no, it's true.
And so let me just tell you one experience that I had when I went in for Deacon Adrian's ordination. Right, I went in by myself. I had to. I believe, Father Basil was ill, and so it was a very stressful drive, right? And it just got more stressful as I worked my way across New Jersey because I knew what was going to happen. I was going to go across that tunnel. No, across the bridge. I think I went George Washington. And I knew what waited me on the other side. I was going to have a hard time finding the place. I was going to get caught among taxi cabs. I was going to turn the wrong way. I wasn't going to be able to find a place to park. All this. Right? Just the anticipation of stress became stressful. And then I got there and it was stressful. And then I got inside the church. And all it took was those 3 deep breaths, go into the altar, and I'm home. And this is the same home everywhere.
Right.
You're exactly right. I mean, and that's the way that our human heart is supposed to become.
Right. Yeah. And so the kingdom is always present. It's just a matter of opening your mind and your heart to perceive it. And then, of course, everything, the entire body of Christ converges at this place called the altar, and the church is made for the Eucharist. And we could talk about this for 1,000 years and never exhaust it.
Right. But mostly we just appreciate it.
Yeah.
We just open ourselves up to that experience of the real.
Yeah.
And then to grow into the recognition that is available everywhere. And you can't back into that, by the way. See, this is what we make the mistake of, I think, sometimes as human beings. We're like, oh, well, look at this. I experience God here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
You do. You'll have a more profound experience of God here and here if you've grown in understanding of the numinous through the experience of God in the church.
Right.
So otherwise, it can be a bit. It's real, but it's not as deep. I almost said superficial, and that's not fair because for the person experiencing it, it's profound, right?
Yeah.
But what we're saying is it can become even more profound if you follow the plan.
Yeah.
Oh, and then what if you put a church in the Appalachian Mountains? Yeah.
But there's that, I think Father Schmemann said it so perfectly. It's simple. But he said, human beings are Eucharistic, doxological creatures. We are never more ourselves than when we're praising in thanksgiving. And that is never more actualized, realized, perfected than at the altar.
Yeah.
The beginning of our life starts at the altar, and it goes back to the altar.
Right. Yeah. So that's that sense of place.
Mm.
That's that sense of place. And here's let's add another dimension to it. And that is that this place we're never quite at home here. Any sense of the real is just pointing us towards the real we were made for.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we look forward to, we're sojourners here, is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so these places where we do feel connected to the real, the good, the true, it's because the things that we experience there are foretastes, prophecies of the complete sense of that we're going to have in the remaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. So my home, the place I grew up I grew up in a wonderful home, right? Love, it was safe, food was good, all the things that you would hope to have in a home. And so when I look back and I think, man, that was awesome. I am also at the same time looking forward to the realization of that, taking the integral of that. Mm-hmm. All the sense that I suspect you have in New York City, the connection, all the love, the energy there, it's going to be perfectly realized in the age to come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Takes more imagination for me with that in New York City, but
Well, it's the same for me in places that are, less urban, shall we say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being with a friend of mine who from Kentucky, and he and I went walking out in rural Pennsylvania, and I was afraid to walk out the door. I mean, I could walk through rough neighborhoods in New York at all hours, and be sort of aware. I knew what I was up against. But walking under a sky where you could actually see the stars roaring out of the sky, and smell all the different scents and hear all kinds of creatures in the woods, I was like, and he said, come on, we're just walking around the property. But I was like, I had never really seen the sky that, I mean, like that naked and that
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah, and going out west and the big sky, that's for me, that's even more intimidating than New York City.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no control. There's no illusion of control out there.
Have you ever been to Death Valley?
No.
Oh man, it's like being on a different planet. It's like being on Mars or something. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right. And we can, no matter where we are, I hope people hear this. You can have that place, right? So I was in Afghanistan, right, and away from my home, away from my church, away from predictability, anything like that. So what I did is I carved out a moment each morning, and I found a place on our facility where I had just a perfect view of the sun coming up behind the Hindu Kush Mountains. Right? Okay, so this place, instead of becoming a place that was just full of anxiety or at least alienness,
right.
was now home, and then sanctifying it through prayer, and so I would say the hours, the morning hours at that point, and so that became a place, a real place that I could be at peace and enjoy. So as I walked out, through to that certain area, it was that morning pilgrimage where I would encounter the sun. So, anyways, that we can do that pretty much, even in a with our headphones now, we can do that pretty much anywhere. Yeah. So the sense of place. We've got now we've got 15 minutes to talk about politics.
Okay.
Are you up for it?
Sure. Yeah. Buckle up.
Yeah. So, the way our divisions are manifesting themselves up right now are about the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to share something with you, and then we can riff off of it. Okay. Sure. So this is the kind of thing that political scientists make careers off of, because there's a lot of data, and you can leverage that data to try to understand. So where do these divisions about how to respond to the coronavirus, where do these come from? And we know what the polemics say, right? Well, one side is stupid, and the other side gets it, right? And they have words that dress it up, and they have their authority figures with degrees that make them feel confident in their decisions. But come to find out, and you won't be able to see this, but I'm gonna pull up a chart. That's another thing we're getting experts at in these times, are charts, right? Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Yeah, so here's a chart, and what it shows is it says experiential versus motivated political explanations for why conservatives and liberals view the COVID-19 pandemic as differentially threatening. Can we make that sound any less confusing or boring? Exactly. So the real question is what's behind the differences in the experience of this coronavirus. So one of the questions they ask is, how concerned are you about this? And come to find out, the best explanation for this, the explanation with the most power based on data, not just based on opinion, but based on data, is you can predict someone's attitude towards the virus not based on how proximate they are to people who are suffered from it, right? That you would expect that, right? Not education, none of these things. It's based on their ideology. Based on their ideology. And so I'm just going to read a little bit from it here. Oh, where is it? We have found little evidence that different experiences with COVID-19 account for liberal and conservative different views of the pandemic. Instead, participants' desired political outcomes more consistently accounted for ideological differences in disease threat perception. Okay, and that's what that figure is about. So, this is huge. So, we're basing our attitude towards this virus on our tribe, our political tribe, rather than on our objective assessment of its danger. And that's weird. That's just bizarre, right? Yeah. So,
well, it seems to speak to layers and layers of conditioning over the past, especially in the last decade. It really has seemed to exponentially get worse in this regard. All these layers of conditioning that are sort of ideological filters, and there are, I guess, different ways of trying to understand it. But one of the things that I keep hearing that it's almost become like the cliche, but I think it's true. That to a large degree, this ideological inclination on the part of people, left, right, whatever, is a replacement for what religion used to. I mean, politics has become religion, and if we didn't understand our religion to begin with, we certainly don't understand our politics, because we don't understand history, we don't understand the philosophy behind it, to a very significant degree. I mean, I remember teaching once and asking adults to name the 9 Supreme Court justices. If I got one answer, and these were not dumb people, these were college-educated people, Americans, in New York City. And, I mean, the lack of steeping in political traditions, philosophical traditions is staggering. And yet we have these, visceral allegiances to these ideologies, and we don't really understand what we're advocating. And a lot of the times, and we go to them because we don't have a deeper base with which to understand and perceive the world and process what's going on.
Yeah, and you're right. It is visceral. Visceral means that it's felt, right?
Yeah.
And the psychology is that the science behind this is that our feelings, our instincts about what is right and wrong come first, and then our words justify it. And a lot of those feelings are based on tribal affiliation. Now, this has been a constant of human nature, right, since the fall, right? And a healthy religion, Orthodox Christianity, right, been around for a long time. It produces saints and healthy communities because it works with our human condition to protect us from its worst effects and then, deify us. So you have these rails built in against following your feelings, calling for humility, these built-in rules of love your enemy, turn the other cheek, these other kinds of just guidelines built in. Hey, you're gonna hate the other. That's your instinct. Don't follow that instinct. Those guards are not up on political ideologies.
No. And by the same token, to be fair, I think without calling it ideology, the same dynamic, I think, is present also in religion, and it's even more insidious because it's wrapped in the clothes of pieties. I mean, to me, it seems to me that all ideology, all these things, is all about self-insistence, self-substantiation, which is in direct contradiction to the gospel, and the giving over of self in order to find the ultimate self, which is God in Trinity. You know what I mean? But we even, and you see it, and it's especially horrifying when you find it in yourself or when you find it in other religious people, and they're just sort of totally. It's the wolf in the sheep's clothing. You really are, despite all your incense and all your prayers and all your stuff, you're really insisting on your own will, and it makes it even more dangerous, I think. So we have to be even more vigilant than anybody else, I think.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And that's the way our seminary program is structured.
Yeah, yeah.
Is you're more dangerous once you graduate from seminary if you're ordained. Oh my goodness, you know
Mhm.
all the God words. You have the authority of the church, and if you want to justify your will, and you won't recognize it as your will.
Mhm.
Your
Yeah,
your ego will conflate what you want with the will of God, and then now you can dress it up with all your words. You can justify it. It feels like you're doing theology.
yeah. Mhm.
Our feelings can't differentiate from what is good and what is wrong. And so
Right.
what we end up doing is we end up doing evil in the name of God, which is complete blasphemy. That's the
Yeah,
definition of blasphemy.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's bad to curse, it's bad to take the Lord's name in vain. But what
Mhm.
that's really about is saying in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then
I might. You're right. Yeah, exactly.
oh my goodness. Yeah, so these things though they're built in, they should move us away from that kind of stuff.
Right.
The calling for humility is the beginning of all virtues, right? The love of the other as the self. These
Yeah.
things are supposed to allow us to transcend these tribal barriers. There is no longer Jew nor Greek, male nor female, but there is one in Christ, right? All
Yeah.
these things are designed to teach us to move beyond the ego and into something better.
But it's hard to let go of that. It's hard to let go. It's the only thing you know. It's the only
It
thing that
is.
you really trust is that you are. You know what I mean? That's the only real thing you're aware of. Like, people have said that. It's the one thing you can know is that you are. But it's also a burden because the only real being is I am. God, and being able to ultimately yield to that being that that well, that, I was about to get philosophical there, but that's it, and it's an ongoing process, and it's really really hard to do, always hard to do, because your desire it's biological. Your desire to survive in every manifestation of that sense is so basic, that to hand that over in trust is it's hard, but it's the only true liberation. And so ideology just pales, whether it's left, right, or whatever. It's just pales, and it's a fool's errand. And you just see, sometimes if you're lucky enough, you can step back and go, "What are you doing? What are you doing? This is completely fruitless. It's unhelpful, and we know deep down we know better."
We know deep down that we know better. I like that. Yeah, you're an optimist. I'm an optimist too. Because what that means is all you've got to do is feed that part.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it can get a little overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? The and we experience each other right now in an artificial way because most of our interactions with people right now are on social media,
Hmm.
right? And that's not an accurate portrayal. If you want the ability to just self justify, if you want the ability to go straight into tribalism, social media is kind of set up for it. It's set up
Oh,
for
yeah.
the ego, and so it's not being. Whereas face to face stuff, there's more of that natural empathy that comes out. That good place gets touched,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
we're not seeing that right now, and we need it. This is one of the things that I miss so much with congregational worship
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is we need that not necessarily the touch but the face-to-face interaction. Otherwise, people just become ideas. They become abstractions. And right now, we are able to, this is my opinion, we are able to, if we have deep relationships with people, we can kind of coast on that. We can energize those connections through this kind of thing that we're doing right now. But at some point, it can easily veer into crazy land, or into the unreal, unless it's reinforced by actual personal connections.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really our bishops, they know this, right? They sense this even more than we do. And so they understand the longing that we have, the need that we have for personal connection. And this is one of the reasons why our bishops are like, look, when we get together, we're going to do it all at once, and it's just going to be the greatest, communal Pascha that we've ever experienced in our lifetimes.
We're all coming out of the tomb together.
Yeah, we're going to come out of the tomb together. Yeah, and so, they're starting to build up anticipation for this.
Yeah,
right? We don't know when it's going to be, so you can't build up too early, right? Because the worst thing you can do is build up anticipation and then, say, oh, it's... But that's... Oh, man. I really do look forward to that day. And I look forward to the day where you and I can talk on the front porch of St. Sophia's again.
Oh, yeah. That you mentioned places. That when I first started going there, it was such a new thing for me, and it was so... I was constantly saying to myself, like, every other minute, like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? Why am I here? But now, going there, it's home. It really is. I mean, being there and seeing all you guys and seeing the bishops and being in that chapel, it's a real refuge. It's a real oasis. It's a thin place. It
is. Yeah. And as I speak with more and more seminarians, that's what they get to. We have the distance learning program, right? And everybody sees that residency at the end of the quarter as a pilgrimage home. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, Deacon Timothy, we hit places and we hit politics.
We managed. We should talk more about politics, I think.
I think we should talk about the way it's come into the church, because it's very natural for us to behave that way in church as well.
Absolutely.
Not just as theologians, but as believers. You can line people up based on the websites they follow, the literature they read, even the words that they use. The tribal language and stuff has worked its way into the church, and it's we have to get out of it.
Yeah, it can be lacerating.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not a celebration of place; it's a celebration of me. Of me. Yes. Oh, fantastic! Well, thanks again.
Hey, thank you.
Tim.
This is great.
This is so good for me.
For the rest of your papers today, and tomorrow's Friday, so that's good. Yeah.
Well, tonight we're going to celebrate. So my wife just had her birthday.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was one of those big ones. Right? One of those big birthdays. And tonight we are going to turn our house into a comedy club. We're going to kick the kids out. We're going to send them upstairs. That's where the kids' bedrooms are. And there's this virtual or online comedy club thing that's going on. And we bought tickets for tonight because an old friend is a comedian, and we haven't seen him in 20 years. And
wow.
He's doing his shtick. Yeah. It's going to be great. And, his name's Kostaki Economopoulos.
That's comedy right there.
That's comedy right there.
Sorry to my Greek friend.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, is he going to... I wonder if he's going to... Because he used to do audience interaction stuff.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if he knows that I'm a priest or not, right?
But
that's how he grew up. So I know he's got some jokes on it, right? So we'll see what happens. Yeah, and well, anyway, so y'all, we've really enjoyed spending this time with you. It's been a blessing for both of us, and I hope it has been for you too. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and share it with your friends. They might enjoy it too. They might like this. It's possible, right? So share
Strength.
it with them. If you have suggestions for shows or people to interview, I'm up for that. I'm always open to suggestions. And look, let me be honest, to criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I need it. Because I got to move out of this, right? Okay. Well, until next time, brothers and sisters, Godspeed.
Thank you very much. Peace.
Peace.